Hello to all my fellow survivors and warriors out there of this awful thing called trauma. I'm just getting up this morning, but I wanted to do a video, and I want to try to keep it on track and do it, every day until I actually get some viewers that can relate to the situation or are interested in the topic that I am speaking of. Yesterday, I spoke a little bit about the beginning of my childhood, and I want to just continue on talking a little bit about the things that happened to me and how I felt about it. But then not only that, how I began to heal and deal with the things that were plaguing me. Because when you have been through a lot, inside you are damaged. You are wounded, you are insecure, you're afraid, you carry a guilt, shame, pain, and a lot of baggage that you really don't know how to deal with. So in those areas, I hope that I'll be able to help someone, as well as by sharing my story, it will resonate with someone and be able to help them connect and maybe even, relate to what I've been through or what they're going through, and that's my way of paying it forward. So I'm not quite sure where I left off yesterday, but I know that I was probably in the abuse of the age of 5, 6, 7. I'm going to go on to where I was about 9 or 10. We used to have dogs, and my parents bred poodles. And so one of my chores was to go out and feed the dogs in the morning and change their papers, because they go on, they were in pens. So you'd have to clean the papers, throw them in the garbage, and put fresh ones down. And so when my dad would get home, my stepfather would get home from work at night, he would go out and check the dogs many times. One particular night he came home, checked the dogs, and they happened to be wet. Well, it was the middle of winter, and in the middle of winter, when you're cold, you gotta pee more. That's just, now I know that, I'm a grown-up. But at the time, when you're a child, you really don't know much. You are not wise about the world at all. And so I could hear my father's footsteps coming up the stairs it was mid-morning, maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning now. Mind you, I had school the next day. And he woke me up and told me, "Come on, Queenie, we got to go outside. You didn't do your chore right." Now, Queenie was his pet name for me, and it wasn't a nice name. It was said, condescendingly. It was said hurtfully. It was said demeaningly. It just didn't sit well with me at all. And when I think about it, it just makes me want to cry, because he was a cruel man, So we went out to the shed, and the dogs were barking, and of course you had to take a flashlight. There was a dim light bulb that you would turn on, and the shed, because of the wind, the shed door would blow. It didn't, like the hinge, it didn't have a latch. So we would always put a big boulder against it to hold it, to keep it closed. So the shelter for the animals would be better, and of course, the door wouldn't be swinging. But that particular night, he locked me out there, and he told me he will be back out to get me. Now, I'm standing out there in the middle of winter at 3 o'clock in the morning in the dark. I'm a little girl with a flashlight. These dogs are barking, and now I am locked in this shed. I can't get out, and I am scared. And the dogs won't be quiet. And in my little mind, I don't know, I snapped, started screaming at the dogs, like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." And everybody was shutting up except for the one. And I began to hit her. And I hit her many times until she cowered in the corner. Now, I had to go to therapy. I really carried the weight of this with me for many years, because I killed something, and to me, that's just the greatest awful thing you could ever do. But I digress. So I was taken back in the house eventually after the dogs were all done. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought she was being quiet. And then when I went back in the house, my stepfather had filled up pitchers of water and made me drink them. And then when I had to pee, he said, "All right, Queenie, go out next to the porch." In other words, outside on the side of the steps and squat like a dog, which I did. Now, my mother is there. This is my adopted mother, mind you, but I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know this till a couple years later. And she's allowing this. So finally, when he was satisfied with as much as he could do to torment me, I guess he was ready for bed, sent me to bed and told me, do not knock on your door, because if you do, I'm going to beat your ass. So in other words, if I had to pee too bad, you better hold it. Which at that point, I drank so much water, there was no way to hold it. So my mom locks me in my room. I always had a hook latch on the outside of my door until I left home. I ran away many times, but I'm digressing again. So my mom puts me in my room, locks the door, and I swear it wasn't even 10, 15 minutes, and I just couldn't hold it no more, and I started pounding on the door, calling for my mom. Well, she came one time, she opened the door, let me use the bathroom. She said, Michelle, don't do it again. She said, because you know how your father is. I'm not going to be able to come back and let you out. Now I'm terrified. And there's nothing to go to the bathroom in my room. So I opened the second story window and I scooted out the window and I peed out the window the rest of the night every time I had to go, because I was afraid if I went to bed or peed anywhere in my room that the next day I would be getting a beating, and I would have. Come the next morning, I went out to take care of the animals, and Goldie, the one that I had hit many times because I had to feed them and take care of them before I went to school, well, she was lying in a corner. She was dying, and I could tell she was dying, and I couldn't tell. My stepdad was petrified. I was actually afraid when I was younger that they might kill me, or he might kill me and hide my body. I didn't know. I was terrified. I didn't know what he was capable of. So I pushed the dog under the shed. And I mean, it haunted me. It haunted me for years because of what I did. And I told them that she wasn't there. She ran away. And they believed me. All right. So that happened. And then another incident happened at the same place. Now, we lived up next to a pond. It was like a triple row house, and we had neighbors. And this one little boy, we used to play with some of our neighbors. His name was Richie. And he came out, he was playing with us, and I guess he pulled his pants. Well, he did pull his pants down in front of me. And when I saw that he did, I quickly turned my head. I was embarrassed and ashamed. And my stepdad happened to be looking out the window, and he called me into the house. Sends me to my room. I don't remember. Some of the details are fuzzy now. But I know later when he called me back down, he tried to make me draw a penis. Are you kidding me? A grown man trying to make a 10 or 11-year-old girl draw a penis. And this is when I found out I was adopted. So this was like maybe a year or two later. And I looked at my mom. Now I'm there for a couple hours. And I am just like, don't know what to think. I'm scared. I'm a little kid. I'm looking at my mom. She's not taking care of anything. She's letting it happen. So I said to her, Mom, why aren't you helping me? You're supposed to protect me. You're my mother. And she picked up a tea kettle off the stove. She was so enraged that I dare confront her, and hit me in the head with it and said, if I didn't love you, you little bitch, I wouldn't have adopted you. Oh, yeah, really? Well, that's real nice to know. Like, my whole world just kind of caved in, and I thought, in that moment, can you imagine? It's a traumatic moment already. And then you're told what you've already felt inside of you forever, which was you are not liked, you are not loved, you are nothing but a piece of shit to these people. And then you know why. So, we continued to go to school. I was always in trouble. I would go to school and kids would pick on me terrible. So I hated going to school. And then I had to go home, and I hated going home. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little loud. The church bells are ringing. I don't know what time it is. Probably like 7. I've been up since really early at 7. And we stayed where we lived. We eventually had to move, which was good for me because I failed that grade, which was 7th grade. I failed because I was so scared all the time and I couldn't focus on schoolwork. I was just probably very depressed and didn't even know it, I mean, I was a child and nobody was protecting me and nobody believed me. And believe me, I did try to tell people, but my parents, they weren't rich, but they weren't poor. They were middle class. So people believed them over me. I was a child that acted out. And now we know that children do act out when they're being sexually, physically, or whatever abused. But at that time, that was like a closed subject. You didn't talk about it. So there I am, when we move, and I'm thinking, a new start. No. It ended up being just as bad and getting worse the older I got. Now, I don't know how long. This is 11 minutes already. I can't go over 15 or it will never upload. So I'm going to stop here. I'm just going to tell you guys that there is so much. Like, it's probably going to take me a really long time to get to the end of my story because there is so much in there that I have been stabbed, beaten, shot, raped. And that's my adulthood. My childhood is molestation and incestual groping and touching of both my adopted father and my stepfather, that my mother had married two men that were both, I consider now, pedophiles. Like, you touch a child, you're a pedophile, you know? And then when I finally did get up and leave the house, like, I just was so insecure and so damaged that I went to a life of crime. Basically, I met a man who I fell in love with, who got me into prostitution and drugs and alcohol and stealing and robbing and, all kinds of other things, and I gravitated to him because, he loved me and accepted me for who I was. I didn't realize I was a beautiful woman. I didn't realize that I had potential. I just thought there was something wrong with me. I was damaged, I was ugly, and I was just grateful to get any kind of attention. And so I ended up forming a relationship with a man when I was 15 and a runaway. But that's going to be a story for down the road. I ended up marrying that man. He became my pimp, but I was so in love with him, so in love with him. And that's what happens when we've been abused as children, and then we go in these relationships and we're just seeking approval and love, and we're not seeing the signs. Like, I haven't been in a relationship in over 28 years. My son's 27. I left my husband when I was 2 months pregnant, and he passed away, my husband, in 2014. I've never remarried. I've never had another